Hello and welcome to History Talk. Today we're going to be talking about the impact of Coleraine on the feelings in Northern Ireland and the Apprentice Boys. Let's dive in. Okay, let's go ahead. Okay, hello and welcome back to History Talk. Today we're going to be talking about the main effect of Coleraine on Northern Ireland, and then later in the video we'll be talking about the Apprentice Boys and how they also had an effect on Northern Ireland. Finally, in the next video we'll be talking about where the Apprentice Boys come from and all that sort of stuff. So, bit of a backwards thing, but hopefully you're not annoyed by that. Anyway, let's dive in. So the effect of the Lockwood Committee's decision to place the brand new university, second university in Coleraine, it's not a particularly good time either to have this, because it's at this time that nationalists, or mainly actually Catholics, not nationalists, Catholics are beginning to accept sort of, the situation, the connection with Britain. Because they're basically saying, well, as long as religion is equal, this is, relatively okay. Not everyone, but some people. But then, this is basically the message they're being sent. They're being sent the message that no, you're not equal. Because beforehand, if you were in Ireland, you weren't treated as an equal citizen, you didn't have control over your country, but then comes storm of government, and then comes a little bit more power, and Westminster begins to give more power, and now, well, you're not in a great position. A lot of people would still say they don't want to be with England at all, but you are beginning to see more people saying, well, this is good, as long as we have this sort of level of we're all together. But this is a signal that it's not the case. This is just another message, another straw on the camel's back, telling Catholics that no, you're second-class citizens in Northern Ireland, and that is beginning to cause tremendous tension. Because anybody who's thinking, well, maybe we are, it's a good system we have here, is then going to be combated with, well, yeah, if you're a Protestant. But if you're not, if you're a Catholic, then no. Because you can be stopped. You can be, you have your house entered and you can be arrested with no trial. You can have all these things that can happen to you. And while they could technically happen to Protestants, and while there are things that could happen to Protestants, they mostly happen to Catholics. And then there's some things that just don't happen to Protestants, just are set in stone that can't happen to Protestants. And there are laws in place, and there's all these sort of things. And what it means is that persons such as John Hume, they go on to be activists in civil rights marches for the next 3 years. Hume, for example, said the university controversy electrified the people on the nationalist side, and he thinks that it really was the main spark of the civil rights movement. Because of this, because of the time it was, because at this time they were beginning to develop cross-community alliances, these are really problematic areas, especially for O'Neill, because O'Neill is someone who, while he hadn't really enacted any policies, he had symbols of nationalism, rather not nationalism, but really he was acceptant of both religions, of both areas, and that he wanted to make the connection. And this was he had symbols of this. He didn't enact any laws or acts in their favor, or to make them more equal, but the symbols were still there. But this is a clear sign. This really damages his image. Now, the problem with his image being damaged is that does lead to a bit of an issue, because, well, if his image is damaged, then what has he got going for him? And then people just begin to see more and more, but that's not really anything, is it? And people begin to say, well, if you really want to show your nationality, if you really want to show that you have a belief in cross-community relations, then how about you actually have some acts? But of course, in his defence, while he was the leader of the party, his party would even look upon his actions. They would look upon his actions at like, well, don't do that, because people would be like, well, condemning him visiting Catholic schools, which is weird because then people would say on the Catholic side, well, that could you do more than that? I mean, sure, you visited our school, but could you maybe enact a law that protect us, or just remove laws that discriminate against us? And that's the point. So now more people are saying, well, actually put in some action, put actual action in place. Another thing that begins to happen is that there's this kind of pile-on over the next few years, and it's the Apprentice Boys. So the Apprentice Boys are a group that they're not necessarily a paramilitary, but you'd call them a kind of a unionist type group. Now, the Apprentice Boys are founded in Dublin in 1813, but it doesn't really do much that is widely seen, that is widely celebrated, until 1824, when the No Surrender Club of the Apprentice Boys is founded in Derry. Now, the celebrations that they held were, in the defence, alright to really celebrate. Somewhat problematic at who they directed them at, because people basically comes back to the Williamite Jacobite War, which we will talk about in the next video. Basically, getting to the bones of it, the problem is that at this time, parades are a bit of a tension point, because of the problem of how do you if you're a unionist in power and you stop people who are Catholic, people who are nationalists from having their identity, how exactly do you defend having your own parades, having the Orange Order, having the Apprentice Boys, having any real thing like that where you are clearly showing you're celebrating the union with Britain, that you're celebrating, whatever the case may be, something that is anti-Catholic? Then they just don't, because these parades are allowed, and then this begins to cause a lot of problems, because not just the Apprentice Boys but also the Orange Order begin to get involved, not necessarily politically, but in a political sense, but not like in party. There are a lot of people who are members of the Apprentice Boys or who are members of the Orange Order who would also be members of the government. At the time, if you weren't a member of these kind of groups, then it was unlikely that you'd be elected. But furthermore than that, it was that if you wanted to have a rally, a political rally, not even a political rally where you'd actually be a politician, but simply voicing your, if you wanted to defend your rights, if you wanted to, highlight a particular issue, a particular act, a particular law, and it was something that the Apprentice Boys wouldn't agree with, or something that the unionist government wouldn't agree with, you might find yourself, a little bit of a problem, because this time you are in this point in which you can't really elect political representatives that actually can do much. So what do you do? And that is exactly the problem, because you met for sport if you try to have a parade or anything like that, or any sort of thing. And that is exactly what happens to the civil rights marchers, which we'll talk about in a later video. Sorry for the breakup in things, a bit of a miscommunication of topics, but we'll see you next time, hopefully, if you join us next time. And thank you for listening to the video, and hopefully we will see you next time. So yeah, hopefully we'll see you then. Thanks. And before we go, want to subscribe to the channel or view other videos, like not the next video, but just other videos in general before we publish the next video. We've got loads of other videos. If you haven't listened to them or watched them, go ahead and watch them. Thanks. Yeah, and bye.